1, go.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joel Goodman, your guest host for this evening's edition of Higher Ed Live. During the day, I work in Austin, Texas as a web developer and designer. I work with a lot of different institutions in higher ed, as well as startups and other tech companies. But I'm excited to be your host tonight. We have a great show lined up, a really cool topic. You can be sure to follow our conversation on Twitter at Higher Ed Live. You can hashtag things with hashtag Higher Ed Live. And you can follow me personally at Joel Goodman on Twitter as well. Tonight's show is all about work hacks and getting stuff done. We have a great group of people that are going to tell us some of the tricks that they have for staying focused and getting all the things that they have to do in their day-to-day jobs. But first, a word about our Higher Ed Live sponsors. Omni Update is the leading web content management system provider for higher education. The company's web CMS OU campus is secure and scalable with great tools and features, deployment flexibility, and an awesome user community. In fact, it was the highest ranked CMS in customer satisfaction in a 2010 .edu Guru survey. So if you need a CMS, you should check it out at www.omniupdate.com. Integral is also a treasured sponsor of Higher Ed Live, and they are also the creators of the Schools app, a private Facebook community to boost enrollment and retention. Check out their blog, Integral Insights, for posts on admissions, marketing, student engagement, and social media in higher education. We'll be tweeting out a link to that blog just momentarily. So again, that's at Higher Ed Live. Check it out. But now, let's get back to our show guests. We have some incredible people with us tonight. First up, Jeff Stevens, Web Content Optimizer at University of Florida's Health Science Center. Jeff, will you say hi to everyone?
Hello, everybody.
Awesome.
Pleasure.
Jeff also has a really nice ambiance around him. That's a great environment. I like all the Anyway, next we have Ron Bronson, webmaster at Eastern Wyoming College, and half of the genius behind Higher Ed Solo, a great resource for higher ed armies of one. If you work by yourself at an institution, you got to make sure that you check out their website, and I'm sure either Ron or our next guest will be happy to tweet out a link. You can follow Ron at Ron Bronson on Twitter. I'm sure he would love some followers there. And then we have the second half of the genius behind Higher Ed Solo here as well, Tonya Oaks Smith, the Director of Communications at the University of Arkansas's William H. Bowen School of Law. Please say hi for us, Tonya.
Hey, y'all.
Awesome. And finally, Susan Ragland, the Interim Director of Web Communications at Tarrant County College in Fort Worth, Texas, not too far from where I'm at right now. We're happy to have her here. Susan, will you say hi to everyone?
Hello.
Awesome. I'm super excited to have all of you on the show today and to just talk with you about this really important concept of actually getting work done, because and that's what we're getting paid for, right? So it's the start of a new calendar year, and I know that when I was working full-time for institutions, that was kind of the time when I had to start thinking about what I was going to do over the summer and for the rest of the year going forward. We're, really locking down the stuff for the next fall and making sure that all that stuff's implemented, and then starting to work on the next things that are coming up. And so that planning and getting organized part of this is extremely crucial what we want to do. And I know that all of you guys here with us are extremely hard workers, and I'm sure that you have tricks for getting organized and keeping focused. So let's go ahead and start out the conversation today talking about how you all get organized. Jeff, how do you get organized?
That's my continual challenge each and every day. A while ago, I was an army of one too, and I found it more of a challenge when I was an army of one than I do when I'm with a team, which is kind of unusual. But with a team, you have more of a goal that you're working towards, and once you hit that goal, the next goalposts after it are much more apparent than they are when you're a single person. When you're a single person, the path forward isn't clear, and you really have to take time to orient towards it. So it's been less of an issue recently organizing, but I find that my workload has quadrupled in my new position. So organization does become really key for that. So what I found is I need to find a couple of things that I've come across is finding an organization system that works and sticking to it. I have a tendency to write notes everywhere. And then I have tasks lists that are everywhere. I have to-do notes on my computer. I've got my email list. I've got the actual the project management software that we're supposed to use. And I found that when I had them in 4 or 5 different places, I never got anything done because I'd just be jumping from list to list. I couldn't prioritize. So I don't really think it matters what the program is that you find to do it or the method that you do it, but be consistent with it. Pick one and put all of your tasks in that one system, and then use that. That's. I got other ones, but I'd like to let other people talk too. So.
Awesome, yeah. Who else has a list system, or maybe you use a certain kind of maybe it's a certain software application, or maybe you really just do like scraps of paper.
I have an interesting, I guess, paper method. I don't know if you can see this.
I can.
Okay, so what happened, I'm a paper and pencil girl. I do have to keep my calendar on my phone and have all of my calendars synced up to my phone. But when it comes to note-taking and to-do lists, I found that I keep up better on paper. And a coworker, I ran across their notes, and they were actually using this notepad from a previous supervisor. And it has two sides to it. One is a things to do list and one is a notes list. And I have mine, hole punched. I had our print shop actually print them up for us for the department so that we can keep them in project binders. And it's very helpful to me to have notes from the meeting on one side and the things that I must do on the same paper but on a second list, next to that.
Awesome.
I kind of do the same thing. But anyway, can you see?
Oh, yes.
I go to meetings and just take chaotic notes. Like Susan's are really well organized and things, and I take chaotic notes, which then become my low-hanging fruit section, which are the things that I just cross off before I take and move them into Evernote, which is my big organizational system, because I can do it with my computer or my iPad or my phone, and it's all synced. So that's kind of how I organize myself. But I also use my email as an organizational system, and I noticed that Lacey Tite we were talking about it this afternoon, Lacey Tite from Vanderbilt, because when you're by yourself frequently, those are the instantaneous results that people want. So you end up using your email as a to-do list sometimes. So, when I move something into a folder from my main email, then it's done, and I'm, putting it on the back burner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Definitely. Ron, do you have any organizational tricks at all?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Ron's totally disorganized.
No, it's thank you for telling everyone my secret. I do actually, but it's really sort of it's sort of a combination of Evernote, Post-it notes, and rampant prayer. Because it's really hard to keep all the different things straight. I tend to, I think I told you this in the beginning, Joel, when we talked about this months ago. I said that what I tend to do is, if someone gives me a small task, I tend to do it very quickly so they don't forget. This method is not the best method. And so, again, I just find that Post-its are great because I leave them on my desk in front of me, and I tend to get things done and attack them pretty quickly that way. I don't like to leave things behind. So I think my answer to the question would just be to try to do things quick, prioritize and do things quickly rather than letting them go, oh, I'll do that next month, oh, I'll do that next week, and procrastinating. I don't procrastinate very well. I just try to do stuff.
That sounds like my email tactic. Actually, when people send me emails, I have to email them right back, even if it's I'll get back to you in a couple hours, or I'll get back to you tomorrow sort of situation. I have to email someone right away, otherwise I will forget it, and then I will have to scroll down my list and go, oh man, I was supposed to email them 2 weeks ago. I'll tell you one, like Tonya was talking about her chaotic listing and note taking. That's actually what worked best for me when I was working on the last full rebuild of a site, redesigned rebuild of a site that we were doing at Trinity International University. I got a big old yellow legal pad, and I just wrote down a checklist. I have to do this and this and this and this and this and this. And I just went through and crossed them all off, and it was really, really ugly, and it actually worked in that situation. But it was really ugly. These days I try to use software, but a lot of times the pencil and paper thing will work the best. I wonder if anyone on the back channel actually has their own methods, and I would love for you people to share some links with us and share some links with everyone else watching Higher Ed Live tonight. So we've heard about Evernote from a couple of you. Do any of you use other apps? It may not be just for organization, but it may be just to keep track of things. It may be reminders. Anything that comes to mind.
Well, we've gone through 2 or 3 different attempts to do project management at our office with varying levels of success. We had been using TeamLab for a while, which is kind of like it's pretty similar to Basecamp, but it's a free program. But we found that it had more features than we were using on a regular basis. So we've gone actually to 2 smaller programs, and both of them I absolutely love. One of them is called Asana. That's asana.com. It's a very lightweight, task-oriented system that doesn't have a lot of added features on the back end other than doing the tasks. But building a task list is very simple and intuitive. It builds subtask lists that you can easily assign to other teammates. And also it's got a very great mobile app that's tied to it. So you can pull that task list up on the fly. It sends you daily updates in the morning for your tasks for the day that you've set. And I've moved all of my tasks lists over to that, both what I have from work, my home lists, and my freelance work. All of that I'm running through that right now, and I love it to death. The other program we're using is a time management software called Freckle. Freckle is spelled without an E at the end, I believe. It's a Web 2.0. But it's a very lightweight time management system too, which generates pie chart reports for a team, so you can see exactly where you've been putting your time in various projects. It's very easy and intuitive to use. I recommend both of those pretty highly.
That's awesome. I found I've used a lot of different apps over the years trying to get organized or really trying to get teams to build on it. And I think I found that you really just have to try a lot of them and figure out what works for you. And if you're working in a team setting, that's even more crucial, making sure that it works for you, but also works for the other people that are working with you. And sometimes it's 2 programs, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's emails, and you'd rather it not be, but sometimes it is. Any of you other guests here tonight work with teams and have found any kind of software that works, or maybe just a story of software that doesn't work?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can I just, Jeff, you talked about the tools that you're using now to manage time and things like that. Do y'all use a chargeback model, or do you
our office currently doesn't do a chargeback model, but we have at least one team member who does work on grant-funded projects who does have to account for their time that way. Generally, this is, for a general sense, more for giving our administrators what are the largest areas of investment in our time in the overall system. So at the Academic Health Center, we work with 6 colleges and about 5 hospitals, and there's around 430 smaller sites in the system too. So this gives them a good overview of departments that we might spend a lot of time working on their site, that we might want to look at investing in the future, having some dedicated FTE working towards that, or also just seeing what might be workflow issues that we might need to work on over time, because some units might be taking up more time than others. So it's just a good tool for giving people an overview of where we are and what we spend our time on at any given time. I'm rambling now.
That would be, well, I think that would be an interesting model, though, for armies of one or solo practitioners, because like I talk about the fact that I have one big dean that I answer to directly, and then I have baby deans, but the baby deans all think their project is the most important project, and so you never quite know who's getting the most attention.
Exactly. One of the nice things about Freckle is it's based off of project, but projects allow you to also put tags on the end of them, so you can tag exactly what was the work that you were doing for that individual project. So you can also break that up then by task when you go to administrators. Say, this is how much time I spend on content management. This is how much time I spend on site updates. This is how much time I spend on social media. You can break up the reports that way as well.
That sounds cool. I like information and stats when things that I'm working. So I tend to tag tend to tag tasks that that I have very heavily because I like to see what I've been working on later on in the year. Hey Ron, on the back channel here, you were talking about Orchestra that you use as a task management app for iOS, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about it.
Well, we've already established that my organizational skills are lacking, but I think that, but ideally, I download a lot of these tools because they're really great in theory, and it's one of the ones that, actually, I use it for, well, at work, I have other methods. When I'm cooking and things like that, I'm very organized, and so, you know, food I need to buy, and, you know, what I'm going to make, and things like that. I find it really helpful for keeping track of recipes and things like that. So it's just useful for, you know, mostly just to-do list type stuff. I don't use it really as special, but it looks nice and it was free, and that's usually a good way. So I figured folks just try it out, see if they like it. It was well recommended a while back. There's another one that I can't remember the name of right now that I used for a good while. I'm using an Android phone now, but I used to have an iPod that I used more as a phone, basically. And it was like and I'll find it before the show is over. Basically, it was a thing that remind you every day to do something. Like, it was like, you know, okay, so guilt you into doing this thing every day at 4 o'clock or whatever it was you were trying to do. And I found that really, really useful for a few months. About not even really specifically related to work, but talking about the life-work balance thing. Okay, now it's time for you to do something else. And it was really, really great for that thing. Especially when I was switching to be gluten-free. I know that's nothing to do with higher ed, but again, balance. Balance. So anyway, I'll find that, I'll tweet it out, and we can talk about something else.
This is actually a great segue into another topic that I kind of wanted to address, and I think many of us, in my experience of 6 years in higher ed, and my experience in still having relationships and friendships with many of you that are still practicing in higher ed full-time, all the time, nearly 24 hours a day, is that topic of work-life balance. We work very, very hard to represent our institutions well, and we work very hard to do awesome stuff. I mean, we want to make cool things. We want to do cool projects. We want to show off what we're capable of. But at some point, you know, it's very easy to get to approach that burnout factor. And I think for a lot of us, we've spent those of us that have a balance, we've spent years and years trying to figure out how we do that. And so really, I mean, I don't know that we're going to get to the core of how we do the balance, but I'd like to hear about some of the things that that each of you do in your life to kind of, I guess, decompress a little bit from what's going on. So we haven't talked to Susan in a while. Susan, you have anything that you I don't know, something that takes your mind off of work for a couple hours and helps you kind of refocus and get back down to what you want to do?
I do, and it may sound humorous to folks, but there's actually a couple of things. One is music, and that one may not seem weird to folks. I can see the company I'm with. I know all of you, you know, on a friendship level too, from conferences and things. I think we'd all agree with music. We do that even at the office for focus. So it's not just work-life balance, but in our office we try to have a really good a camaraderie and a team atmosphere. In the afternoons around here, there's usually about 15 minutes when we all sort of let loose a little bit. We have music, or we kind of congregate and just talk about things, especially if the day's been stressful. And then I kind of carry that over when I go home, and it's kind of funny. I've gotten my mom and I live together now, and I've gotten her to enjoy The Big Bang Theory on TV. And it's about the reruns come on TBS just the time that I'm getting home. And so that is how I de-stress. I usually watch 2 episodes of Big Bang Theory, and we have a good laugh, and it helps us to not even think about work and really not even think about the problems at home, any of that stress. And that really has seemed to work well for me, just finding that some kind of humor to break up the day.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in with something? I'll say that I personally am also kind of a TV decompressed person. Like if I need, like, I feel, and I did this in grad school actually, when I would be writing or reading just tons of stuff and also working full time and then doing like freelance stuff, I would really need to just turn my brain off, because I tend to be the kind of person, if I go to bed right after I've been working or right after I've on anything, I just can't sleep because my head's just going. And so I'll usually turn my brain off by watching something, whether it's a movie or television or something. but I think a lot of us probably have other things, like, you know, some people actually do read to decompress a little bit. So Tonya, anything that you do?
Well, I run. I think we had a post on Higher Ed Solo about the work-life balance and taking care of yourself, and I think that's something that probably in the past 5 years I've realized the importance of. So I run, and I do yoga probably 3-4 times a week. You know, I do those things. I read a lot. I just started reading a lot of the books that I read in high school to try to read them with a different mindset. Like, I just finished tests, and it's, you know, it's amazing when you read things that you read when you were 17, 16, and you read them at whatever age I am now. And, you know, it's amazing the viewpoint you have, the difference there. I also think that our relationships that we have with each other can save us in a lot of ways from just being absolutely nuts. Like with Susan, I'd consider one of my best friends. Hey, Sus. And, you know, even though we're not together, especially us women in this business, we have really special relationships, and my relationship with Ron is really strong, and we talk a lot about a lot of different things that have absolutely nothing to do with work. Right, Ron?
That's correct. I guess I'll just jump in really briefly. Oh, I clearly will now. And say that I don't know. I think that there. I don't know. I tend to work when I feel like it, which tends to be a lot. But I also know how to like decompress when I feel like it, which is not as much. But I tend to find ways to meld them together. So obviously music's a big part of that. You know, with the Higher Ed Music Critics blog that we do, Joel and I. So Joel and I really met. It was through that years ago. And so obviously through relationships and things like that, which have gotten better for me in the last year, just sort of coalescing different folks that maybe I knew but didn't know super well. And it's definitely me being out here sort of on an island in a way. It's really helpful to have those kinds of relationships because sometimes you feel like, gee, I'm the only one, and maybe no one knows what I'm going through or whatever else. And it's helpful to know that you're not. I don't really watch much television, but I did take up Ultimate Frisbee. I forced myself to try something different. I will say this, that you need to try different things, even things you wouldn't think you'd like, just to force yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes. So last year I felt like I've been sitting on the couch too much, just on my computer doing things, even with just talking to folks. And I'm like, I should get out more. I'm not playing enough tennis because I do that, but I have no one to really play with locally. Like, I should do something different, something alone. And so I decided, one of my friends said disc golf. So I tried it, and I don't love it, but it certainly served the purpose of getting me out and doing something different. And so I think that if you embrace the idea of doing different things, that you can surprise yourself sometimes.
I think that's a really good point, Ron. I think it's important to kind of mix up what's happening in your brain by doing something new. I mean, my wife and I, since moving to Austin, we started taking Lindy Hop lessons one night, every week, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, we go and we dance and meet new people and have a good time, and it helps me. It takes my mind entirely off of what things I have to do right now, what website I have to have built, or what I need to get, what comps I need to get designed and sent out to clients. And I think trying new things or going out and doing things that are kind of novel are very important. Jeff, I would love to hear from you about some of the things that you do to decompress. I know that you're very active and taking your family out places and going and doing cool things and you document those all on social media so we can pay attention to them. Which is I have a lot of fun. I really enjoy seeing the cool places you go.
Thank
but
you.
Yeah, but how do you feel that helps you refocus and re-energize for the work that you're doing?
It's good to take that moment just to have that clarity of something outside of what we do every day, because sometimes we get locked in to just that thinking about the immediate problem that we can't step back and think about what was the issue above that, and especially where we're working. But it's the same true with anything else in higher ed. When we're building for a website, we're trying to relate to people and how people think, and sometimes we can get so bogged down on the technical solutions that we don't take the time to step back and appreciate that. So the time I get to spend away from it, and it's not as much as I want. I'd like to think that I'm not turning into George Banks, but sometimes that is the feeling you get. I like those times that I can just get away and say this is not work time. So generally, between when I get home and once the children go to bed, I try and keep that space open, that I'm not going to be working on something else. It's not enough time to spend with the children. I wish I could spend more, but you work with what you have. And we do a lot of activities outside of the house. My children are homeschooled, so we have a little bit more flexibility in that kind of regards. But we try and get out. We try and travel as much as we can. I probably should be off the computer more often than not, but as you can see from Instagram, I can't. So I'm kind of addicted. But those times really give you that moment to just step away and appreciate the bigger things in life. So when you come back, you can apply that back towards the work you're doing.
That's really cool. I appreciate that you communicating that, because I think a lot of us try to find that middle ground, and it seems like a very worthwhile way to re-energize yourself, but also invest in the people that you love around you. You know, whether it's family or whether it's friends. Either way, I think a lot of us could probably use a little bit more time just actually being away from the work that we do. Now I'd like to transition just a little bit and talk about when you're super busy in the office, you know, when there's crazy stuff going on, and you really need to focus and get something done. What are your guys' tactics for doing that? What are certain things that help you stay focused on the task that you need to get done right now and not succumb to, you know, maybe it's people calling for, you know, random meetings that they didn't schedule earlier, or maybe it's, you know, that urgent email that really isn't urgent, but the sender thinks it's urgent. Susan, do you have any ways to stay focused on things that you need to do right now?
I will revert you back to my earlier comment of music. I think as a rule in our office, I have a different role now than I did before, and so I try to make sure I'm accessible to the team, the whole team. But when there are times that I have to absolutely focus, because none of us have separate offices, we're in a cubicle environment. I have on the headphones, then they know that means I'm working. And usually that means I'm working with maybe CSS or something that's, I just cannot be interrupted or I'll lose my mind. And they know when they've blown my mind anyway if they talk to me over the headphones, because usually I get a look on my face and like, oh no. But usually I do. I have the music cranked and I have the headphones on, and that helps me kind of focus and get absorbed into my own world so that I can really get the task at hand accomplished.
That's awesome. I worked in my last job. I worked in an open studio setting where we basically had, like, the design team was right behind me. I was the lone web person. We had a few of the marketing people that were kind of in the same space, and I would kind of do the same thing. When I needed to focus, I would just turn on music and stare into my very large iMac and kind of get, like, I felt like I was kind of being sucked into the iMac, and the music was kind of, you know, filling in around the back of my head or whatever. But yeah, I think that's an excellent way to do it. Anyone else on the panel have a different or different means to staying focused?
Tonya, did you want to talk?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because I really can't, because I have the role of dealing with the media for my school, I really can't turn completely off. I have to be accessible, which the work-life balance is interesting at that point too, because accessible means accessible, and you can't control when the media needs you. But one thing that I've discovered is that people tend to have this this perception of what an office should look like, and if my lights are off, people will not walk in my office. That is as good as shutting the door in a lot of ways, because if the light is off, nobody works with the light off. They just don't think about the fact that, well, people who look at computer screens all day, they have enough light, in front of them, so the light behind you can frequently screw with what you're looking at. So I shut off the lights in my office, and I sit in here and do work with just, what's going on.
Ron, you start to talk.
Ron, me. Ron, talk. Caveman, speak. Well, it's a funny thing for me because, I don't know. I think when the going gets tough, I get going, and so I don't know. I don't really close doors because I like to know what's going on. I'll get up if I have to and sort of decompress, but for the most part, really, it's just turning music on and just kind of grinding out whatever needs to be done. And I mean, I think that those situations don't bother me. It's when things are murky and things are kind of just no one really has a plan and we're just kind of, that's when things aren't as good. But when things are like, okay, we need to do this and we have to do it right now, it's when I thrive. So it doesn't, I mean, it's probably not the right answer, but those situations are when I do my best work because I know that soon it'll be over. It might have something to do with the fact that I served in the military. So I view everything sort of after that as like comparatively not as bothersome to me because I'm always like, oh, no one's yelling at me. And if they are, they're not yelling as loud as someone in a brimmed hat. So again, I recognize this is a little off the beaten path, but it's how I approach it. I don't know. So so my takeaway for everybody else is when you're thinking about how stressed you are, think someone could be yelling at me right now with a brimmed hat.
Or it could be raining.
Or it could, and you could be, no, they could be doing it while it's raining, while they're doing that.
While you're doing push-ups.
While you're doing push-ups. While you're doing push-ups. No, low crawling in the mud.
Amazing. Jeff, do you have any ways to stay focused when there's all kinds of stuff going on and you really need to get something done?
No. Generally, I'm the person who interrupts other people in our office during those periods.
Excellent.
We're a bullpen kind of office too, and everyone's headphoned most of the time in our office. So what we do is we have a shared Jabber client that if we need to nudge someone else in the office, we politely ask, "Are you available right now?" And then that will be our one question. And if they say no, then we schedule a time later that we can turn around and talk. But and that way we kind of keep in our areas. And we also have the advantage that most of us are on MacBooks, so we have a standing policy in our unit that if we need to get up and go somewhere else to work, we can pick up and move as long as we're on the Jabber client, so each other can reach one another. That works pretty well. I saw Brian Fanning mentioned going to Starbucks. We have a Starbucks 2 floors down, so that's somewhere that sometimes our team goes off to hash out things. We got a couple of green spaces behind the office, which are nice to go to too. And luckily we have a campus-wide internet, so we can go into that space and still keep working. So that works well. The only other thing I would say is I don't have to be on email the whole time I'm working. So if I've got a task that's absolutely important, I'll shut off email for an hour or so and then come back after I've completed that task and then go through the email, because I know if I sit there and I watch the counting numbers down there on the email, that's going to be my time suck. I'm always going to click on that because I'll be, what's the next thing that came in on email that I need to get to? And if it's something that was of a crisis level, because of our team environment and Jabber, we'll be communicating back and forth there. So anything that was absolutely important, we'd have a fallback method to contact one another there.
I have a question for Jeff.
Yeah.
Because you were saying, so you're sort of in a bullpen situation, but I guess you eat your headphone for most of the day. Is your office, like if an external person came in, is it pretty quiet in there? Do you just hear the clicking of the keyboard, or it's curious to me because our office is loud and it's bustling, and what's funny is everyone in here likes it. Today we had a vendor come in, and so we were meeting at a conference table, so everyone got really quiet, except for us that were those of us meeting. And someone even commented, "Oh my gosh, it's so quiet in here, I can't think." And I find it humorous that our office is loud, and we like it that way. And so it's interesting to me that you all are in a bullpen, but it seems like maybe it's quiet.
Every time a marketing or PR person comes to our office, they go, "How can you stand it being so quiet?" We are a very quiet group, except when we turn to have those conversations, because once we get into a conversation, then everyone basically pulls off their headphones and then gets involved in it. So it varies back and forth, but in general, we are pretty quiet operation, even though it's a very large space. It's a converted television studio that we work in. So it has the potential to be very loud, but generally it isn't.
Wow.
So that Jeff's comments on turning off email kind of lead me to another thing that I want to talk about, is just the struggle that we all have with filtering signal and noise, with whether it's social media or whether it's our RSS feeds or our email clients. Do you guys do anything other than just turning it off? I mean, I don't know that anyone has mastered it yet, has gotten to the point. But I mean, do you have any strategies for still keeping up with the information that you want to know, but not having to deal with all the stuff that you don't?
I think that, it depends on what we're talking about. Let's say Twitter, for instance. I mean, there are things that people will tweet that I will miss, but for the most part, I think that when you have trusted agents, people that you value their opinions, you tweet something, I'm probably looking at it. I may laugh, but I think that once you have those individuals that you begin to respect or whatever, then you focus in and hone in on those kinds of things. And so I think that it extends to everything else as well. Is that if I get an email from a particular individual that whatever I trust or whatever, I think that I'm more likely to pay attention to that than if it was from somebody who I didn't know. And that's just one answer. I don't know. I think that as far as Twitter's concerned, I look open TweetDeck, and for some reason I have this really good ability to just sift out what matters and the stuff that doesn't. Of course, a lot of things you miss, and then you come back to it later and oh, gee, that was really great. But usually I find out about it because someone I know posted about it later. That's me. I'm done.
I'm the same way. I find that in the middle, especially if I'm working, I personally end up just ignoring whatever's on social media, and I think it's by accident, really. I'll come back and I'll be like, oh man, I've got a whole 6 pages to scroll up, and I'm old school and still use the Twitter app for Mac, the normal one, and I'll have huge length to scroll. I missed all of this. I'm not going to read it, and I just go up, and then I'll see oh, Ron said something, and I'll tweet back at him or recommended music to me or something like that. Anyone else have tricks, or is it kind of a moot point these days?
Well, no, I think that what I have found myself doing is, and this impacts work-life balance too. I have my alerts on my phone really, really specialized. So I control when I check my email. I control what, things give me beeps and boops, and, I can't stand, and this is horrible, but I can't stand looking at the phone and seeing alerts pop up and not responding to them. So it's easier for me to have a handle on that if I just control when it's checked, So that's my way. I will have different windows, different browsers, different things open on my computer, and if I don't want to see what's going on my email, then I'll minimize that browser and open up another browser. I'm not a tab person. I'm not, because I can look up and see how many new emails I've got. So I tend to do that. I had to turn off the TweetDeck sounds, because that was a total distraction at times. So.
I want to piggyback that just briefly and just say that I echoed a lot of that. I hate ringing noises. Can't deal with it. I don't know when it started. I think it's when when regular phones went away or whatever. I know I have one in my office, but in general, Like when that stopped, I stopped with ringing. So my phone was always on vibrate. And obviously, I'm not in charge of the communication, so I can get away with that. But I don't, even during the day at work, even when I'm home, I don't like it. TweetDeck sounds, I don't have them. Email noises, don't have them. Like, I don't, any of that alerts. I don't want to be alerted to anything. I'll look for it myself if I want to find it, and I've got a system for that, but I don't need you telling me, oh, so-and-so sent you a Facebook message. I don't have any of that stuff on my phone, for instance. Talk about balance, Facebook messages, tweets, any of that stuff. None of that stuff goes to my phone. If I look for it, it's there. But I just and I'm pretty active in social media, so, I mean, it's pretty weird, but I can't deal with it. I don't like it, and I just don't let it happen. I'm done. That's me.
Great. I want to give a chance. Anyone else, Jeff or Susan? Do you want to chime in on that, or we can move on to something else? Okay.
I think that's the final word.
Sweet. Just take Ron's approach, I suppose. So I know when I had a more normal full-time job where I was working for someone else and doing tons of work, I'd pull in like side jobs and specific hobbies that were, weren't so much like, I mean, there's things that we do like Tonya runs and I do swing dance lessons with my wife and things like that. But like there were other things that I would pull in that were kind of like work, but more like work that I enjoyed to do at home. And I was wondering, I know that Jeff does design on the side, and I was wondering if any of you have specific hobbies that you find really invest in your mental health away from the job and help you really kind of focus in on what you need to do when you're at work. Jeff, you want to talk about your design a little bit?
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't really do that as a hobby. The position I had before this one was a much lower paying job in higher education, so freelance was a real necessity in that job, and I've got a couple of carryovers from that, and I do some work from time to time, and that's to make ends meet, basically. So that I find between that and work, that's cut into a lot of what used to be my hobby time. A long time ago, this is very geeky, I used to try and build my own version of Memory Alpha, the Star Trek Wikipedia at home after reading Star Trek books, until one day I discovered there's a Wikipedia already existing that has all of that information, and my hobby kind of crashed and burned at that point. And now just basically television has been my decompressor for a while, Hulu and Netflix. It's not very active, and maybe I should get into something better like hiking, but hiking in Florida holds no appeal to me. Palmettos and roaches and but reading I guess would be my thing. Bicycling, I would like to do more bicycling. I signed back into a gym. Does that count?
Yes.
I haven't gone yet. I've signed back up.
It totally
haven't
counts.
Gone yet.
That's the first step. Ron, I want you to talk about what you like. You cook a lot, man. We see food pictures all the time. The whole food hat thing.
Yes, the whole food hat thing. So the cooking actually wasn't a hobby. It was something of necessity because I found out that I was celiac last year, and so I had to. And there are no like gluten-free restaurants around the corner from my house. I know you're shocked by this. And so as a result, I sort of had to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do? And so I started cooking and failing at it, and then I got better and better. And since there's no one else to eat it, no one told me it was terrible, so I just kept doing it. And I take pictures of it and put it on the internet. So that's been really great because it forces me not to. I can bring my iPad for recipes, but I can't type on the computer and cook. So it's a really good way to get me out of my living room where my computer is and into the kitchen. And yeah, I mean, that's a big one. It's a really big one. Music's a big one because I can do it and do other things at the same time. I find strangely enough that catching up on movies that I hadn't seen because I have a huge movie blind spot has been really great. Because if nothing else, what's great about it is that it helps you interact with people that you don't know very well. When you find yourself in these weird conferences or whatever, and you get to know somebody, and you've seen this movie, you've seen the same kinds of cultural references. Because I tend to listen to obscure music, so that never works.
Except for me.
Well, right. Well, I've got to increase the number of friends who listen to good music, so that also helps. But But I find movies do that, and I'm going to tweet some silly things that I do. I play like these really bizarre sex simulations. Talk about weird hobbies. I'll take the Star Trek thing and up the ante. I play these games that they're not like regular sports games. They're more like spreadsheets, but you control all the aspects of the teams and things like that. So like all the players and the history of the franchise for like 200 years, and you control all these things. And I play online with other people, and it's sort of bizarre, but it's a lot of fun.
Great.
That's all I got.
Susan or Tonya, either of you have like hobbies that you invest your time into?
I shop.
Hey, I think shopping's a great hobby.
And I collect shoes. Let's see if the internet breaks.
Shoes were mentioned.
Oh, I don't do my hobbies as often as I used to. I do want to get back into them. I enjoy sewing. I love reading, and I'm pretty freaking awesome at the Michael Jackson experience on the Wii.
Fantastic. I used to build guitar pedals, and then we moved to Austin. I didn't have any space for a workbench, so that kind of went away. And I play some music from time to time, and really just I try to do design stuff for myself. Actually, like if I need a break, I'll try to do something that's just for me, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But yeah. So we've got another 12-ish minutes left in the show, and I want to talk about kind of a big deal, stress, because I think that we all have jobs that can be high stress at times and low stress at times, and different people have different ways of managing and dealing with that stress as it comes up. And I want to talk about some of the things that you all have found work to help you stay sane in those times when everything is ridiculously crazy and you don't want to have to do stuff, but you do. Anyone want to volunteer to start it off? Susan?
Yes. I would like to echo something Tonya said earlier, and it goes back to relationships that we have. And honestly, I think if I didn't have some of the relationships I had with other folks in higher ed who work on web, marketing, social media, the things that we all work on, I would just plumb lose my mind. And not only with the work stress, but again, to echo Tonya, Tonya is one of my very best friends, and there are several that are in the higher ed community that are my best friends, inside and outside of the higher ed community. And just having someone to talk to about things and to maybe bounce ideas off of, whether it's work-related or personal, I think that's important, especially, for me, I'm single, so I don't have a spouse at home or a significant other at home to kind of help decompress or bounce things off of. And so for me, family, having them to bounce things off, but definitely close friends who understand what your work is like is important to me, because you all know what my work is like. And so whether we're venting on Facebook or Twitter or, a private message to Tonya, it's knowing that someone else understands what you're going through.
Totally. I think a lot of our discussions always come back to how valuable this community in higher ed is, and the relationships that we've established and continue to create between each other. Anyone else have ways of dealing with stress that you think would be beneficial for us to hear? Ron? Stop laughing at me.
Nice. I like that. I'm just going to say this because I told my students this earlier today. One of the things I do here is nothing to do with my job. Is I debated in college and I debated in high school, and so I help with the debate team here, and it's great because I get to interact with students a lot. And obviously it's not really a web guy kind of thing, but I try to make it a point to interact with actual people every day. Especially folks who don't necessarily do what I do or know what I do, because I find it therapeutic. I find it is just and it puts a face to the work you're doing, I think, because a lot of times it's like you feel like you're just doing all these things, but you don't necessarily feel like there's an end to it all the time, or that folks get it. And so I like interacting, especially with students, because again, they've got a different vision of things, different view of things. And when they're freaking out, I always tell them, look, you're not a heart surgeon. No one's going to die if you don't do this. So just take a deep breath, relax, and just understand that the perspective, I think, is really what I try to remember when I'm stressed out. And it's not always possible to do that, but I try to just remember that you can, especially when you're doing your best work, that at the end of the day, that you can only do so much, and that you're going to get it done, that you're going to accomplish those tasks, you're going to make those things happen, and just to remind yourself not to go berserk as if somehow you're never going to get it all done, because you will. You'll figure it out.
Awesome.
That's funny, Ron. I had that discussion today with a student who's working on our symposium. It was just, almost that verbatim, it's okay.
Look at us, we're mind melding.
Relax. It'll all get done. It's okay. Sorry, Joel.
Yeah. No, it's fine. No, I think I used to think I was really good at handling stress, and then I think in the last couple of years I've really had to reevaluate how I handle stress myself, because I've been in positions where I'll just feel so overwhelmed that I'll either turn lethargic, or I'll just be just really freaked out and have to just sit and work, and we'll work all day and all night to get something done. And I don't necessarily think that's healthy, especially when you feel compelled, or I guess you feel like you have an obligation to do that, and you absolutely have to get it done right now. And I think Ron's point is a good reminder that it'll get done. Calm down. No one's gonna die. At least you're not being screamed at in the rain while you're crawling in the mud. Whatever. Jeff, do you have any tips for us on how you manage stress?
How to handle stress? No, because I handle stress poorly. I get into that paralyzed mode that you're talking about. You just want to shut down once there's too many things. You're like, I don't know what to do.
I could be using this.
I guess I've gotten better, and I've started taking the same tack Ron has talked about, that when I start scheduling and organizing to begin with, I take those long-term tasks and I schedule them farther out in anticipation that there's going to be something in the next few days that's going to be a crisis or needs to be done right away. So that's generally been my new mantra, is that it's going to be iterative, and I should just take it each day at a time as it comes across my plate.
Give me a toggle. This is me.
Some days that works, and sometimes it doesn't, but it's a good philosophy to work with.
I think it's a great philosophy to have. It's what I have been slowly learning for myself and telling myself as I get into more and more work coming my way. So in the last few minutes here, I want to hear from you guys about I don't know, anything you want to impart that we didn't talk about today yet. Ways that you feel you do things really well in managing your work and life situations, and or things that you see as warning signs in higher ed, and maybe want to encourage other people that are watching today to watch out for, and to not to worry about. I think it's helpful to hear from people that we know, that just what they see from the outside of how the rest of our industry is going on. So is there anything that you think we as individuals in higher ed need to look out for as we go forward?
Don't feel like you have to do everything yourself. I think that if you're a resourceful individual who's hardworking and you want to solve all of the problems, I think there's a penchant to think you can just sit and if I just work hard enough and if I just do enough, it'll all get solved and I'll solve everything. Don't be afraid to go to your bench. Don't be afraid to ask people. If you're a solo, talk to other people. Leverage the resources that you have. And even if you don't have anybody in the institution who does what you do, that's when you go to somebody and say, look, I need assistance with X, Y, or Z. Because if you don't do it, if you don't say anything, a lot of times folks don't know that you need help. They just see you doing it and they think, well, gee, I guess you can do it all yourself. And so you need to educate in order to salvage and save, your sanity.
That's great. Thanks, Ron.
I know for me, I don't know why it took me to be 35 years old to figure this out, but it's not the end of the world if some of our things don't get done. And I say that knowing that it's possible that some of my supervisors will end up seeing this video. But it's not the end of the world. And, something that really resonated with me earlier, Ron and Tonya talking to students, is it's okay, it will get done. And it really took me until this winter break to understand that what we do is very important. And I don't want to say it isn't life or death, because sometimes we do find ourselves as communicators dealing with emergency situations in our respective colleges and universities. But outside of those emergencies, the work will get done, and it's about us trying to balance that. Just the whole point of the show, balancing work-life load. My vice chancellor, my supervisor, he's always telling me, Susan, part of your biggest job is managing expectations. And so sometimes it isn't about, staying here at the office until 9 p.m. It's about making sure if I'm not going to get out of here until a little bit late, maybe it takes me emailing someone to manage their expectations and let them know this won't get done, but I will be right on top of it in the morning. So
I think one of the things that I guess I have come to the realization is that it's not so much a stress thing if you realize that the only person's behavior you can impact is your own. And so there are a lot of things we can internalize in higher education. We have, professors who can be difficult to deal with. We have administrators who can be difficult to deal with. We can be difficult to deal with. We can have all these things that happen to us externally. But the only person we can fix and worry about is the me. So I just try to do the best I can with me. And I think that that's my way of dealing with, the stress that I have.
Awesome. Well, Jeff, you have anything?
It took me a long time in higher ed to get to a position where I could learn to say no to anybody. That I was definitely an all the things person who they'd come to me and I'd say, oh, absolutely, we could do that. And I'd try and move heaven and hell to make it happen. And it took me getting into another position where I had more of a support structure behind me that made it generally understood to me that I would have that kind of empowerment to be able to say, what are critical things, what are things that could be put on the side burner, what are things that we'll bring up for discussion later, and some of these things are things that are not mission critical that we won't do. I hadn't been in a position like that before, and I think that's something that everyone in higher ed, especially Army of Ones, need to be able to do, to have that kind of empowerment to make those kind of decisions. And it's not often that you find that right now in higher ed, and I hope that as time goes by, that the profession will allow people to get into a position like that where we have a little bit more authority along those lines.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being on Higher Ed Live tonight, and thank you all for watching this evening. Let's keep working together and helping each other make it through and balance our work lives with our regular lives and still do cool things. I just want to mention that next week on Higher Ed Live, Chris Syme will be hosting a very important show about higher education crisis communication entitled Crisis 2.0, Using Social Media to Build Advocacy and Protect Reputation. And her guest will be Dr. Bill Smith. He's the Director of University Branding and Marketing at Northwestern State University in Louisiana. We have a link being tweeted out to some of her articles on the topic. It's going to be a great episode. Make sure you come back here next week. Thanks again to everyone, to Jeff and to Ron and to Susan and to Tonya. And thanks to the tech side over at mStoner for getting eView Live up and running for us. And thank you all for watching. Have a great night.